In May 2021, the world witnessed a catastrophic maritime disaster unfold off the coast of Sri Lanka. The MV Express Pearl, a Singapore-flagged container ship, became the center of a fire and environmental crisis that left a lasting impact on the region's marine ecosystem and economy. The vessel, which was en route from India to Singapore, was carrying nearly 1,500 containers filled with cargo, including hazardous chemicals like nitric acid, sodium methoxide, and other toxic substances. It was during this journey, while anchored off Colombo, that the disaster began. The trouble started on May 20, 2021, when a fire broke out on board the Express Pearl. Reports suggest that the fire originated from a leaking container that was carrying nitric acid. The crew had requested to offload this hazardous container at ports in Qatar and India, but both requests were denied due to safety concerns. This denial would prove to be a critical mistake. Once the fire started, it quickly spread across the ship, fueled by the flammable chemicals stored in various containers. Thick black smoke began billowing from the vessel, creating an eerie scene just kilometers from the Sri Lankan coastline. The Sri Lankan Navy, Coast Guard, and other emergency services immediately launched firefighting operations, but the fire proved too intense to control. 4 days, firefighting efforts continued. Tugboats sprayed water onto the burning ship, and planes dropped fire-retardant chemicals, but nothing seemed to work. The fire raged on, with explosions rocking the vessel as more containers caught fire or exploded due to the heat and chemical reactions. On May 25th, an explosion occurred, severely damaging the ship and releasing even more toxic smoke into the atmosphere. The danger of an oil spill was looming, which would have made the situation even worse. By May 27th, it was clear that the fire was uncontrollable, and the situation was deteriorating. The Sri Lankan authorities, fearing an environmental disaster, evacuated the crew and ordered the ship to be towed further out to sea. Despite these efforts, the Express Pearl sank on June 2, 2021, after burning for nearly 2 weeks. Environmental catastrophe. The sinking of the Express Pearl triggered one of the worst marine environmental disasters in Sri Lankan history. As the vessel sank, hundreds of containers filled with chemicals, plastic pellets, called nurdles, and other cargo spilled into the Indian Ocean. These nurdles washed up on Sri Lankan beaches, covering the coastline with tiny plastic particles that posed a threat to marine life and the fishing industry. The toxic chemicals released from the ship created dead zones in the water, where marine life struggled to survive. The fish, turtles, and other sea creatures in the region were found dead, poisoned by the chemicals. Coral reefs, already under pressure due to climate change, suffered further damage from the chemicals and debris. Sri Lanka, whose economy heavily depends on fishing and tourism, faced devastating losses. The government imposed a fishing ban in affected areas, leaving thousands of fishermen without livelihoods. The beaches, once popular tourist destinations, were now littered with toxic waste and plastic pellets, further hurting the country's economy. Investigations into the incident revealed that the leaking container of nitric acid had been a known issue before the fire broke out. The ship's owners, Express Feeders, admitted that they had been aware of the leak but were unable to find a port willing to accept the hazardous container. This raised serious questions about the handling of dangerous cargo and the responsibility of the shipping industry in preventing such disasters. Sri Lanka sought compensation for the environmental and economic damage caused by the disaster, and lawsuits were filed against the ship's owners and insurers. Cleanup efforts were launched, but experts warned that the damage done to the marine ecosystem could take decades to fully repair. The MV Express Pearl disaster serves as a stark reminder of the dangers posed by modern shipping and the need for better safety measures when transporting hazardous materials. It's a tragic example of how one ship's misfortune can create a ripple effect that devastates an entire region's environment and economy, with consequences that last far beyond the initial disaster.